You will not believe the twist at the end of this story. What started as a simple love triangle spiraled into one of the most shocking, jaw-dropping sagas I have ever covered. A tale of obsession, betrayal, and a finale so brutal, it sent shockwaves through their entire world. This is the story of Jasmine, Gino, and Matt. And trust me, by the time we get to the climax, you will be questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and revenge. But before we dive into this insane story, if you're new here, you need to do me a favor. This channel is dedicated to unraveling the most complex human dramas out there. To make sure you never miss a story that will leave you speechless, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button right now. It helps more than you know. And don't forget to ring that notification bell, because what happens in the final act of this story, you're going to want to be the first to know. Now, let's set the scene. Our story begins not in a place of darkness, but in apparent sunlight. Jasmine and Gino. To the outside world, they were the picture-perfect couple. They met in college, built a life together, and for years, their social media feeds were a curated gallery of shared smiles, adventurous vacations, and #couple goals. Gino, a steady, somewhat traditional guy, worked in finance. Jasmine, vibrant and ambitious, was building a career in interior design. They had the house, the 2 cars, the golden retriever. The script of a modern fairy tale, seemingly written and ready for its happy ending. But like so many stories, the cracks began in the shadows, in the spaces between the posted pictures. Friends started to notice a distance. The laughs in group photos seemed a little forced. Gino was increasingly preoccupied with work, while Jasmine often spoke of feeling unfulfilled. The routine of their life had become a comfortable cage. This, researchers will tell you, is the fertile ground where drastic changes take root. Enter Matt. Matt wasn't just a new person, he was a force of nature. He was Gino's old childhood friend, but they had lost touch for nearly a decade. While Gino built a stable, structured life, Matt had been living what he called off the grid, traveling the world, starting and selling businesses, embodying a kind of reckless freedom that was utterly foreign to Gino's world. When Matt reappeared, it wasn't just a reunion, it was an invasion. He was charismatic in a way that felt dangerous. He listened to Jasmine with an intensity Gino had seemingly lost. He praised her designs not as a hobby, but as profound art. He spoke of passion and risk and living in the moment. To Jasmine, stifled in her pristine life, Matt was a hurricane of fresh air. To Gino, Matt was a thrilling reminder of his youth, a welcome distraction. He never saw the threat. He only saw his old friend bringing excitement back into their living room. The dynamic shifted subtly at first. Group hangouts became Matt and Jasmine conversations with Gino chiming in from the sidelines. Inside jokes formed that excluded Gino. Matt would drop by with coffee for Jasmine when he knew Gino was at work. The emotional affair, as psychologists term it, was in full swing long before any physical line was crossed. The camera of their lives, once focused on the couple, was slowly panning to include a third, more dominant figure. The first major rupture happened during a weekend trip to a cabin, a trip meant to rekindle the spark between Jasmine and Gino. Matt, of course, was invited. What was supposed to be a romantic getaway turned into a showcase of Matt's daring versus Gino's caution. While Gino worried about the weather report, Matt convinced Jasmine to go kayaking on the choppy lake. When she fell in and came up shivering but exhilarated, it was Matt who wrapped her in a blanket, who laughed off the danger, who made Gino's concern seem like boring pessimism. That night, after Gino went to bed early, Jasmine and Matt stayed up by the fire. The distance between them on the couch, captured in a photo Jasmine later accidentally posted and quickly deleted, said everything. It was inches. It felt like miles to Gino when he saw it. The confrontation was inevitable. It happened in their pristine kitchen, under the cool glow of LED lights. Gino, finally vocalizing his unease, accused Jasmine of emotional infidelity. Jasmine, bursting with a frustration years in the making, didn't deny it. She spoke of feeling unseen, of being a prop in Gino's perfect life plan, of how Matt made her feel alive. The argument was a floodgate opening. And it ended not with a resolution, but with a chillingly calm statement from Jasmine, "I need some space. Matt has offered his guest house for a while." Gino was devastated. He felt betrayed twice over, by his wife and by his oldest friend. In his despair, he did something unpredictable. He reached out to Matt, man to man, friend to friend, pleading for him to step back, to remember their history. Matt's response was not one of apology or contrition. It was a monologue, a philosophical justification. He told Gino that people evolve, that bonds must sometimes break for true growth to occur, that Jasmine's awakening was more important than preserving a stagnant marriage. It was a brutal, self-serving lecture disguised as wisdom. Gino was not just losing, he was being schooled on why his loss was necessary. Jasmine moved into Matt's guest house. The separation was public now, a silent scandal among their friends. Gino became a ghost in his own home, while Jasmine's social media transformed. The curated perfection was replaced with images of her new chapter, abstract art, midnight drives, photos where Matt was always just out of frame, a suggestive silhouette. She was, as she captioned one post, finally breathing. But here's where the first twist in our tale emerges. The guest house wasn't a sanctuary, it became a gilded cage. Matt's intense attention, once so flattering, began to morph into control. He questioned her outings, suggested her friends from the old life were toxic, and slowly began to critique the very dreams he once championed. Her design ideas were now impractical. Her desire to see family was holding her back. The hurricane of fresh air was now a constant, overwhelming storm she couldn't escape. The guilt over leaving Gino mixed with a dawning fear of Matt, creating a prison of her own making. Gino, in his loneliness, underwent his own transformation. The steady, predictable man began to change. He started therapy. He reconnected with old hobbies. He slowly, painfully, began to rebuild his sense of self without Jasmine as its centerpiece. He even started dating casually, a fact that somehow reached Jasmine and struck a nerve she didn't expect. The man she left behind wasn't crumbling, he was, against all odds, healing. This didn't fit the narrative Matt had sold her, or the one she had sold herself. A chance encounter at a local coffee shop 6 months into the separation was the catalyst for the final, terrifying act. Jasmine and Gino ran into each other. The conversation was awkward, laden with unspoken history and pain. But for a moment, the old familiarity flickered. They shared a sad, genuine smile about a memory of their dog. Gino mentioned he was doing okay, and he seemed to mean it. Jasmine, in a moment of vulnerability, confessed she missed aspects of their old life. No grand reunion was planned, but a seed was planted. A seed of doubt about the path she had chosen. She made a critical error. She told Matt about the meeting. Matt's reaction was not the angry outburst she feared. It was something far colder. A silent, calculating stillness fell over him. He simply said, "After everything I've done to free you, you're still tethered to that ghost." The affection was gone from his eyes, replaced by the cold assessment of a strategist whose plan was going awry. The mask had fully slipped. The charismatic liberator was gone, revealing the obsessive controller beneath. The next few days were an eerie calm. Matt became excessively polite, almost formal. He gave Jasmine space, which should have been a relief but instead felt like the quiet before a catastrophic storm. Jasmine, trapped in a web of fear, guilt, and confusion, felt paralyzed. She stopped posting on social media. The new chapter had stopped mid-sentence. Then, came the night of the incident. It was triggered by something seemingly small. Jasmine, gathering her courage, told Matt she was going to spend the weekend with her sister to clear her head. Matt, who was working on his laptop, didn't look up. He just said, quietly, "No, you're not." The finality in his voice broke something in Jasmine. All the fear coalesced into a surge of defiant anger. She yelled that he didn't control her, that she was leaving, that she finally saw him for what he was. She began throwing clothes into a bag. This was the challenge to his authority he could not tolerate. What happened next was a blur of horrific violence. Witnesses from neighboring properties would later give fragmented, terrifying accounts to the authorities. They heard raised voices, a scream that was abruptly cut off, and the sound of shattering glass. According to the official reports, Matt brutally attacked Jasmine. The argument in the guest house escalated physically. He assaulted her, causing severe, life-threatening injuries. The specifics are too graphic for this narrative, but the outcome was horrifically clear. Jasmine was beaten to the point of unconsciousness. In a final, horrifying act, she was reportedly thrown through a glass patio door, causing deep lacerations and compounding her traumatic injuries. Matt then made a call. But it wasn't to emergency services. Not immediately. The sequence of events suggests a chilling period of calculation before an ambulance was finally summoned. Precious minutes were lost. Jasmine was rushed to the hospital. Her condition was critical. She had suffered a severe head trauma, multiple fractures, and massive blood loss from her wounds. She was immediately taken into surgery and placed in a medically induced coma in the intensive care unit. The doctors were not optimistic. Her family was told to prepare for the worst. Matt was arrested at the scene. The charges were severe: aggravated assault, attempted murder. The community was in shock. The charismatic friend, the agent of change, was now a monster in custody. The news spread like wildfire, painting a sordid tale of a love triangle gone fatally wrong. And where was Gino in all of this? He received the call in the dead of night. The call no one ever wants to get. He rushed to the hospital, where he was met by Jasmine's weeping family and the stern faces of law enforcement. The man who had been her husband, who had loved her, who had lost her, was now confronted with the possibility of her being lost forever in the most horrific way imaginable. His grief was compounded by a tsunami of guilt for not protecting her, for not seeing Matt's true nature sooner, for every argument that had driven her toward the beast. He became a fixture in the ICU waiting room. He brought coffee for her parents. He sat for hours, staring at the floor, a monument to regret. In his mind, he replayed every moment, every crossroad, wondering how he could have altered this terrible timeline. Then, another twist. As Jasmine clung to life, the legal machinery began to turn. Matt, from his jail cell, was orchestrating a defense. And part of that defense, his lawyers hinted, would involve discrediting Jasmine's character and portraying Gino as a jealous, unstable former husband with a motive. The horror of the attack was now being compounded by the impending horror of a trial where the victim would be put on trial. It was in this pressure cooker of grief, legal anxiety, and surreal trauma that the most unexpected and controversial development of this entire saga occurred. Gino, after weeks of vigil, made a decision that would leave everyone who knew them utterly speechless. It was a decision born not of love, but of a twisted sense of duty, strategy, and perhaps a form of shared madness inflicted by the trauma they had both endured. He went to visit Matt in jail. We don't know exactly what was said in that visitation room. But sources close to the situation reported that it wasn't a confrontation. It was a conversation. A negotiation. Gino, the betrayed husband, was talking to the man who nearly murdered his wife. And then, the impossible leaked out. A rumor so absurd that it was initially dismissed as tabloid garbage. But as the days passed, and as Jasmine remained in her coma, the rumor gained traction. Gino was not seeking vengeance through the courts. He was seeking an alliance. His reasoning, as pieced together by those attempting to understand the incomprehensible, was this: the system was flawed. A trial would destroy Jasmine all over again in public. Matt's defense would drag their entire lives through the mud. The financial and emotional cost would be catastrophic. And what if Matt, with a clever lawyer, somehow won? Or got a reduced sentence? The risk was too great. Gino proposed a deal. A pact outside the law. The details are murky, shrouded in the opaque language of legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements. But the outcome became terrifyingly clear. Matt, in a shocking plea deal, was convicted on a significantly reduced charge. The sentence was lenient, a fraction of what the original charges would have carried. The family of the victim, Jasmine's own parents, were reportedly furious but powerless, apparently convinced by Gino and a team of lawyers that this was the best outcome for their daughter's future peace. Matt was to be released in a matter of months, not decades. And then came the final, world-shattering headline, the one that makes you question the very nature of reality, loyalty, and the human psyche. The week Matt was released from prison, Gino remarried. But he did not remarry Jasmine, who was now in a long-term care facility, awake but facing a years-long, incredibly difficult recovery, both physically and cognitively. Her memory of the events was fragmented, her spirit shattered. Gino remarried Matt. A civil union, a legal binding of two individuals in a partnership. The photos, leaked by an anonymous clerk, were surreal. There was no celebration, no family. It was a stark, administrative affair in a courthouse. Gino and Matt, standing side by side, signing documents. The looks on their faces were not of joy, but of grim, determined resolution. It was the closing of a contract, not the beginning of a romance. Why? Why would Gino do this? The theories are wild, disturbing, and speak to the darkest corners of human psychology. Theory 1, the custodian theory. Some believe Gino did it to gain ultimate legal control over Matt. As a spouse, he would have rights, influence, and the ability to monitor him. It was a life sentence of surveillance, a gilded cage of Gino's own making to ensure Matt could never hurt anyone again. A marriage as a prison. Theory 2, the asset theory. Others speculate it was financial. That Matt had hidden wealth, or that there were insurance policies, settlements, or assets from the case that Gino could only access or control through this macabre legal union. A cold, calculated financial move born from the ashes of violence. Theory 3, the trauma bond theory. Psychologists suggest that shared, extreme trauma can create pathological bonds between victim and perpetrator, and even between those orbiting the tragedy. Gino, in his grief and guilt, may have formed a twisted identification with Matt, the other man who loved Jasmine to the point of destruction. This union was a manifestation of that shattered psyche, a way to own and control the very source of the horror. Theory 4, the ultimate revenge theory. The most chilling theory is that this is Gino's revenge. To bind Matt to him for life, to be a constant, living reminder of his crime, to control his freedom and his future not from a distance, but from the most intimate legal position possible. A revenge so complete it looks like surrender. We may never know the true reason. The official statement from their jointly hired public relations representative was a single, bizarre sentence: in the aftermath of profound tragedy, unconventional choices are made to ensure stability and forward movement. We ask for privacy as we navigate this unique path. The story, as it stands today, offers no closure, no catharsis. Jasmine remains in recovery, a world away from the vibrant woman she once was, surrounded by a family that views Gino not as a savior, but as a different kind of betrayer. Matt lives, a free man bound to the husband of the woman he almost killed. And Gino? Gino lives in a house of his own making, sharing a life with the ghost of his best friend and the architect of his wife's destruction. This isn't an end. It's a haunting. It's a cycle of pain, manipulation, and shocking decisions that continues to spin, leaving everyone involved, and everyone who hears about it, in a state of moral vertigo. What happens next? Does this grim partnership hold? What happens when, or if, Jasmine fully recovers and comprehends this new reality? Will the truth ever come out in a courtroom of public opinion or a real one? The story of Jasmine, Gino, and Matt is far from over. This is a living document of a tragedy still unfolding. And that is why you need to stay tuned. This is exactly the kind of deep, ongoing human saga we dedicate ourselves to following. The twists are not over. The repercussions are still echoing. We will be here, tracking every development, analyzing every legal filing, and trying to understand the incomprehensible. So, your action right now is crucial. If your mind is reeling from this story, imagine what the next chapter will bring. Like this video right now if you are stunned by this outcome. Subscribe to this channel because we are the ones who will bring you the next update, the next twist, the next fragment of this unbelievable story. Hit that notification bell so you are the first to know when this saga erupts again, because it will. And in the comments below, tell me, what do you believe is really happening between Gino and Matt? What is the true motive behind this terrifying union? Your theories are part of documenting this story. This is not the end. It is merely the end of the beginning. The rest is still to be written. Stay vigilant. Stay curious. And I will see you in the next update.